In this tutorial, we're going to go through InDesign CC 2020 to go through Classroom in a Book, Chapter 6, which is all about editing text. So in the last chapter, we went through how to flow the text, how to make it work. In this one, we're going to find a way to make the text look even better. So let's go ahead and take a peek at this one. And I went ahead and have my start open. Now, you might get this error message because you may or may not have the font installed. So I'm going to go ahead and say Enable Adobe Fonts. I'm going to tell it to activate, which then is going to go online and tell Adobe to go ahead and let you use this font. So if you ever have that issue, go ahead, tell it to activate. It might take a little bit to get it to work, but it's definitely worth your time. Or if you find one, you can't get the font, we can always go through and do a replace fonts instead. Sometimes you'll find that you're using a font that doesn't have glyphs. You'll have one that works on the Macs but does not work on some of the other computers. So InDesign automatically finds and activates. So I can say, don't show me again, and well, actually I'll leave enable auto activate. So let's do that. That's a new one. All right, so let's go ahead and in our start file, do a file save as. I'm in my lesson 6. I'm going to do a first initial, last name, underscore, InDesign, Classroom in a Book, chapter. We're up to 6. Woohoo! InDesign, save. All right, so the first thing I want to do is make sure we're all working in the same workspace. So let's go to Window, and let's come down to Workspace, and let's change to Essentials this time. So each time you change the workspace, it gives you different types of tools to work with and play with. So it really depends on what you're doing each time. All right, so our end document that we're trying to create has got 3 rows of text. We've got some subheads, so it makes it really nice to have kind of this visual cue that tells you what we're going to do next. So this content load should look pretty familiar. It's the one we just used in the other assignment. All right, let's go ahead and come into here and let's do View Extras. And let's go ahead and do Show Frame Edges. So we want to be able to see the edges. Now let's also go to our screen mode and make sure we're not in preview. Make sure you're in normal mode, so you can actually see all those individual elements, which makes it going to make your life a lot easier. All right, so let's go ahead into this Protecting Your Ps section with our Type tool. And instead of protecting, let's just make it Protect Your Ps. And let's do a Control S and save what we've got so far. Now let's go into our Type tool again, then come over here into the text frame and let's place some text, so File and Place. Sometimes it's much easier to go ahead and type in one program that you're used to typing in and then bring your information in a Word document. All right, so I want to go ahead and grab this 06 gardening.docs and say open. All right, so it went ahead and added all of it. It doesn't quite fit right, doesn't quite look the way I want it to yet. That's okay. Let's do an edit, select all. And let's go ahead, grab our paragraph styles. So right here, you can see that's our paragraph styles. And we've got one called body paragraph. So let's go ahead and change that to body paragraph. So body paragraph went ahead and I'm going to click out. So you can see body paragraph went ahead and told it what to, anything that was before this first period needed to have a bold. It gave us some information on how the lines should be laid out, so it looks a little bit cleaner. All right, so let's go into this first paragraph, and with P's are easy to grow. And we want to change that to the first body paragraph. So what's that going to do is going to take away that bold and put in that drop cap for us instead. Let's go ahead and deselect and do a Control S and save what we have so far. So let's go ahead on this P's are easy to grow once again and click in there. Let's do edit. Let's do find change. And we want to change and play with a few things. So let's go ahead and see that there's different things that we can do. We want to find something in text. And what do we want to find? We want to make sure it's going forward in the direction. And we're going to put in bird, B-I-R-D. And we want to change it to blackbird. All right, and we want to make sure it looks in the story. I'm not worried about including footnotes, so we're going to turn that one off. We're going to make sure that case sensitive and whole word are not selected. So this one's case sensitive, not selected, and whole word is not selected. All right, so we want to do find next. So it's going to go ahead and find that paragraph, find it for us in here. And it should, the first instance should be highlighted. And let's see if we can find it. Here it is, bird, right there. So we're going to go ahead and tell it to change all of those birds into blackbirds. And we should have 4 replacements, and we're good. So, okay. Let's choose something else. Now we want to change the words that are in there that say tip. We want to make that stand out a little bit more. So let's go ahead in that find what? We want to find the word tip with a colon. And we want to type capital tip colon with, and we want to do a few other things. We want to make sure it is case sensitive, so we're going to hit the case sensitive. And we want to do some formatting as well. So in the change format, we want to go ahead and tell it to go the character color. And let's go ahead and make that character color, let's make them that purple cool. And say OK. All right, so now it's going to look for, it's going to find the little word tip. It's going to change it to all capitals, and it's going to change it to purple. So now I want to go ahead and do find next. So we're going to, can't find the match. Oh, that's because we have blackbird selected. Unselect it. Do find next. And we've got a tip right here. And then let's do change all. Now we have 3 different places where we have changed the word tips. We have 3 tips in our paragraph. All right, so right now you see we've got some issues. Let's go ahead and hit done. Let's go ahead and take a look at our spelling. So let's go view, fit spread in window, so we can see the whole thing a little bit better. We want to click in this first paragraph, the P's are easy to grow, and edit. Spelling. I always have my dynamic spelling turned on, but let's go ahead and tell it to check the spelling. And check the spelling is going to find a few things. So first problem we have is cotton. Cotton is spelled wrong, so we're going to grab the correct one and tell it to change. And go through and change all the ones that are not quite spelled right. So we want to change gardener. If you note something that's in there a lot, then we can do change all or add all. So we know the soup is spelled right, so let's go ahead and tell it to ignore it. And we know this is spelled correctly as right. Well, so, and that's an ignore all. Ricotta is spelled right, so let's ignore it. And we can tell it to start from the beginning. It should be relatively well and done. All right, so let's do a Control S and save what we have so far. So what if we want to add words to our dictionary? So maybe there's a word that we need to use all the time. So we can go ahead and add it to our dictionary. So let's go to Edit, come down here to Spelling. Let's go to User Dictionary. And let's go ahead and in the word box, let's write pancetta. And let's go ahead and tell it to add that word. So we're going to go ahead and add that word to, I've already added it, so that doesn't help. So you would add it so it will know it in the future and say done. All right, so I always tell it to turn on my dynamic spelling so I can see the problems as I go along. All right, so let's go to Edit. Let's come down to Preferences. and let's go to Autocorrect. And you can enable the autocorrect, so things like if you know you always spell the wrong, or you want to make sure you always capitalize the name of your university, you can set it to autocorrect and do that automatically. So you can add those and fix those automatically as we go. Alright, so let's go ahead and say OK. Alright, so now if we want to drag and drop. So I don't want to have to cut and paste. Sometimes I just want to drag and drop. So let's go to Edit. Come down here to Preferences. We want to go to Type. Within Type, we want to go ahead and do Type Preferences. We want to make sure that Drag and Drop, that we click both the Enable in Layout View and Enable in Story Editor. So we want to be able to make sure that we can do that. Say OK. So what we're going to do is with our Type tool, we're going to take this low calorie with the comma, and we're going to grab it and be able to just drag it over and move it to high protein and low calorie. So it's really easy to move some of those items around very, very easily without having to worry about a copy paste and put everything back in. Let's go ahead and do a Control S and save what we have so far. So what if we want to be able to use the story editor? The story editor is kind of a different way of looking at your story. So let's do View, Fit Spread in Window, so we're seeing the whole thing. Let's grab our Type tool, go into the first paragraph. Let's go Edit, Edit in Story Editor. So the Story Editor is going to show us just what the text itself looks like without looking at any of the other elements that we have involved. So if we notice right now we have too much text. So if I scroll down here to the bottom, I can see that this much is what is overset. So sometimes you think you've got an error you can't fix. Put on your story editor and it'll usually show you what that overset text is. So in order to fix that, let's get rid of some text. And let's grab the if the P's have been well enriched down to the second crop line. And let's go ahead and hit delete. And now you'll see that we don't have any overset text, which is exactly what we want. Control S. All right, let's go ahead and what if you're working on this with someone else and you want to be able to see what changes they make? So let's go to Type. Let's come down here to Track Changes. And Track Changes, we want Track Changes in Current Story. So you can see what has been done. So let's go ahead and instead of the word 7-layer, so we've got 7-layer salad. We're going to go ahead and change it to balsamic. B-A-L-S-A-M-I-C-P. So now you can see in the story editor what has been changed and who did it. So it makes it a lot easier. So you said, okay, I want it to be balsamic. That's great. Let's leave it there. Let's go to Type. Come down here to Track Changes. Losing my mind. Track Changes, here we are. And I want to come down to Accept All Changes in the story. So you've got all kinds of choices in here. You can say, I'll take changes from so-and-so, but not someone else. So totally depends on what you're going to go with. All right, so let's go ahead and turn my track changes off. I don't want to look at it right now. Track changes, let's turn this track changes off. All right, and let's go ahead and close that up. And Control S and save. And that's a relatively easy way to mess around with editing actual text in your publications. Let's go ahead and get it ready to turn in. Let's do File, Package. I do not have any errors. Let's go ahead and package it. I'm going to make sure it's in my Lesson 6 folder. Instead of the word folder, I'm putting PKG and package. I'm going to come out here to my folders where everything's saved. You've got to be an organized designer. If you haven't figured that already, you've got to be an organized designer. Have different folders for different assignments. Here's my package. I don't have any links this time, which is fine. I have fonts and the three files. I'm going to right click, send to compressed folder. Then I'm going to get my zipped file and I'm going to submit that zipped one to Canvas. So this is a relatively easy one and kind of fun. That's all for this.